The ceramic cup Madison placed on my desk had steam rising from it, but something was wrong with that steam. It carried a sickly, sweet chemical smell that made my stomach turn. Madison stood there watching me, with her perfectly glossed lips curved into an eager smile. "For my new colleague," she said brightly. Her Uncle Robert, our CEO, had introduced her just an hour ago. I lifted the cup and pretended to be grateful, while every instinct screamed danger. When Madison turned to greet someone behind her, I quickly switched our identical cups. Madison picked up her cup without even glancing at it and took a large gulp. I watched her throat work as she swallowed. And then I busied myself with my computer screen, pretending to check emails while keeping her in my peripheral vision. The office hummed with its usual Monday morning energy as people settled into their workstations, and the coffee maker gurgled in the break room. Within 3 minutes, I noticed the first change. Madison's face, which had been pale with carefully applied makeup, suddenly flushed a deep crimson. The color spread from her cheeks down to her neck, and tiny beads of sweat appeared on her forehead despite the office's cool 70-degree temperature. She set the cup down with a shaking hand and pressed her fingers to her temples. "Excuse me," she mumbled. And then she was moving. Not walking but almost running toward the bathroom. Her designer heels clicked frantically against the floor as she stumbled slightly, catching herself on the edge of someone's desk. Papers scattered, but she didn't stop to apologize. I waited exactly 30 seconds before following. The bathroom door was closed, but I could hear everything through the thin wood. Violent retching echoed off the tiles, followed by gasping sobs. The sound of running water couldn't mask the continued vomiting. Other women who tried to enter the bathroom quickly retreated when they heard the sounds coming from inside. 20 minutes passed before Madison emerged. Her carefully styled blonde hair now hung in damp strands around her face. Her mascara had run in black rivers down her cheeks, and her silk blouse showed water stains where Shed tried to clean herself up. She looked nothing like the polished young woman who'd walked in that morning with her designer handbag and confident smile. She saw me standing by the water cooler and her eyes narrowed into slits. She marched straight toward me, her voice rising to a shriek that made everyone in the marketing department turn to stare. "What did you put in my coffee?" she demanded, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You poisoned me! You put something in my coffee." I remained calm, though my heart was racing. "Madison, I think you're confused. I drank from the cup you gave me." I walked back to my desk and picked up the cup I'd originally been given, showing her the lipstick mark on the rim. My signature coral shade was clearly visible. "See? I've been drinking from it. Maybe you're just nervous about your first day." "No," she was screaming now, and tears were streaming down her face again. "You did something! You switched them or you put something in mine." "I know you did." The entire marketing team of 15 people had stopped all pretense of working. They stood in a loose circle around us, some holding their own coffee cups, others typing on their phones. I could already imagine the text messages flying around the office about the CEO's niece having a meltdown on her first day. "Madison, I don't understand what you're talking about," I said, keeping my voice level and concerned. "Are you feeling all right? Should we call a doctor?" That's when she dropped the bombshell that changed everything. "You're just angry because I got the senior marketing position," she spat. "Uncle Robert told me you've been gunning for that promotion for 2 years. And now you're trying to get revenge because he gave it to me instead. You're pathetic, America. Absolutely pathetic." The room went silent. I felt like someone had poured ice water down my spine. The senior marketing position? The one I'd been promised just last month? The one I'd been told would be mine as soon as the board approved the budget increase? I looked around at my colleagues' faces and saw a mix of surprise and pity. Some of them had known. They'd known I'd been passed over for a 23-year-old with no experience, and no one had told me. Before I could respond, heavy footsteps announced Robert's arrival. Our CEO, in his expensive gray suit and Italian leather shoes, pushed through the circle of employees. He took one look at his niece's destroyed appearance and his face darkened with rage. "America, my office, now," he commanded, his voice brooking no argument. As I followed him, I turned back to look at my desk one more time. Both coffee cups had vanished. My cup, Madison's cup, both gone as if they'd never existed. Someone had cleaned up the evidence while everyone was watching the confrontation. My stomach sank as I realized this wasn't just about Madison feeling sick. This was planned, and I'd just walked into a trap that was about to snap shut around me. Robert's corner office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle's skyline. The Space Needle stood proudly in the distance, and Mount Rainier was visible on this clear March morning. But I wasn't here to admire the view. Robert sat behind his massive mahogany desk, while Madison huddled in one of the leather chairs, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and a glass of water clutched in her hands. "Sit," Robert ordered, pointing to the chair across from Madison. I sat, keeping my back straight, and my hands folded in my lap. I'd learned long ago that showing weakness in corporate confrontations was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. "America, I'm deeply disappointed," Robert began, his voice carrying that particular tone of false concern that executives perfect over years of firing people. "Madison came to me just minutes ago with some very serious allegations. She says you've been hostile toward her all morning, making snide comments about nepotism and her qualifications." "That's not true," I said firmly. "I met Madison for the first time an hour ago when you introduced her. We've barely spoken except when she brought me that coffee." "The coffee you poisoned," Madison interjected, her voice hoarse from vomiting. She was standing by my desk when I went to the bathroom right after the introduction. "She must have put something in it then." "I never went near your desk," I protested, "and security cameras will show that." Robert's smile was cold. "Actually, they won't. Our security system underwent maintenance this morning from 7 to 9. Very unfortunate timing, but these things happen." However, what the cameras did capture when they came back online was you holding 2 coffee cups at your desk at 9:15. He turned his computer monitor toward me. There I was, clear as day, holding both cups just moments after I'd made the switch. Of course, the cameras had conveniently been off during Madison's approach with the tainted coffee, but had mysteriously resumed just in time to capture me with both cups. "I can explain that," I started, but Robert held up his hand. "Madison also says you made several comments about her being too young for the senior position and suggested she should start in an entry-level role like everyone else. 3 people have already confirmed they heard you say this." "What 3 people?" I demanded. "I want to know who's lying about me." "That's not important right now," Robert said smoothly. "What's important is that we address this situation quickly and quietly. Madison could press criminal charges for assault. Poisoning someone is a serious crime, America. You could go to prison." My hands were shaking now, but I kept them folded so he wouldn't see. "I didn't poison anyone. If anyone should be worried about criminal charges, it's Madison. She brought me that coffee, and it smelled like chemicals. Yet you drank it," Madison said, gesturing weakly toward my desk. "How could you drink it if it smelled like chemicals?" "Because I switched the cups," I said, deciding honesty was my best defense. "The coffee you gave me smelled wrong, so when you turned away, I switched them." "You drank your own coffee, Madison. Whatever was in it, you put it there." The room fell silent for a moment. Then Madison started crying, loud, theatrical sobs that shook her whole body. "She's lying! Uncle Robert, she's lying! Why would I poison my own coffee? That doesn't even make sense." Robert stood up and walked around his desk, placing a protective hand on Madison's shoulder. "America, you're clearly under a lot of stress. I understand you're disappointed about the promotion, but this behavior is unacceptable. Here is what's going to happen. You have 2 choices. 1. You apologize publicly to Madison, accept a demotion to assistant level, and undergo mandatory anger management counseling. Or 2. You pack your desk right now and, well, let the police sort this out. Those aren't acceptable options," I said, standing up. "I want a proper investigation. I want HR involved. I want to file my own complaint about Madison bringing me a suspicious substance." "HR has already been notified," Robert said, Patricia will be here shortly to discuss this with you. I pulled out my phone, remembering suddenly that I'd been recording a voice memo when Madison approached. I always recorded my Monday morning thoughts to prepare for the week's meetings. My fingers flew across the screen, pulling up the voice recorder app. I have proof, I said triumphantly. I was recording when Madison came over. Everything will be on here. I hit play, and my own voice filled the room, talking about the upcoming product launch. Then I heard footsteps approaching, and Madison's voice, but it was talking to someone else, not me. A male voice I recognized as Tyler from the design team. This will solve our little problem, Madison's recorded voice said clearly. Then there was rustling, the sound of cups being set down, and Madison's bright greeting to me. Robert's face had gone pale, but Madison just smiled. That doesn't prove anything. I was talking about solving the problem of introducing myself to everyone. Tyler was helping me figure out who to meet first. I went to replay the recording, to make sure Robert heard the suspicious tone in Madison's voice. But my phone screen went black, then it flashed white. When it came back on, I was staring at the setup screen, as if the phone was brand new. What? I pressed buttons frantically, but everything was gone. My contacts, my photos, my apps, everything wiped clean. Technical difficulties? Robert asked with fake sympathy. Our IT department did push through a system update this morning. Some phones were affected. How unfortunate. I looked at Madison, and for just a moment, her tears stopped, and she gave me the smallest, most triumphant smile. Then the tears resumed, and she was once again the victim. There was a knock on the door, and Patricia, our HR director, entered. The 60-year-old woman had been with the company for 15 years, and I'd always considered her fair and trustworthy, but the look on her face wasn't encouraging. Patricia. Thank goodness, I said. We need a full investigation into what happened this morning. Patricia didn't meet my eyes. America, I think it's best if you take the rest of the day off. Well, conduct interviews with witnesses and review any available evidence. Please don't discuss this matter with any other employees. But Patricia. Madison brought me coffee that had something in it. She should be the one sent home. Patricia finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that looked like regret. America, given the serious nature of these allegations and the fact that Madison required medical attention, we're placing you on administrative leave effective immediately. Please collect your personal belongings. Security will escort you out. This is insane, I protested. I'm the victim here. The victim. Madison's voice rose to a wail. I'm the one who was poisoned. I'm the one who spent 20 minutes throwing up. You tried to hurt me because you're jealous. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Tom and Marcus, guys I'd shared lunch with in the cafeteria, who now wouldn't even look me in the eye as they waited to escort me out like a criminal. This isn't over, I said, looking directly at Robert. I know what really happened here. And I'm going to prove it. Robert's expression didn't change. America. I suggest you use your time on leave to think about your future. And maybe consult with a lawyer. You're going to need one. As the security guards flanked me for the walk to my desk, I heard Madison's voice behind me, no longer crying, speaking in a normal tone to her uncle. Should I move into her office today, or wait until tomorrow? And Robert's response chilled me to the bone. Let's wait until tomorrow, sweetheart. We want to do everything properly. By tomorrow, this will all be sorted out. I packed my personal items into a cardboard box while my colleagues avoided eye contact. 15 people I'd worked with for 5 years, and not one of them said a word as I was marched out of the building. But as I passed Tyler's desk, he looked up and winked at me. Actually winked. Like this was all some big joke. That's when I knew this went much deeper than just Madison wanting my job. There was something else happening here, and I was going to find out what it was, even if it cost me everything. My apartment in Capitol Hill had always been my sanctuary, but now it felt like a prison. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a legal pad full of notes, and my 3rd cup of tea growing cold. I'd been researching for 6 hours straight, and what I'd found made my skin crawl. Madison Taylor, age 23, had quite a history that her uncle had apparently worked hard to bury. It started with her time at Washington State University. Id found a Reddit thread from 5 years ago, where students discussed a cheating scandal that had been hushed up. No names were mentioned in the thread, but the details were specific. A student in the pre-med program had been caught putting prescription medications in other students' drinks before major exams. The victims would become violently ill and miss their tests, unable to compete for the curve. I kept digging and found a forgotten blog post from a WSU student newspaper that had been taken down but was still cached in an internet archive. The post mentioned that the suspected student was related to a major university donor, which explained why criminal charges were never filed. The student had quietly transferred to a private college in California. Then I found Madison's LinkedIn profile, or rather, her old one that she'd forgotten to delete. It showed her at Pepperdine University in Malibu for exactly 1 semester before another unexplained departure. More searching revealed a lawsuit that had been filed and then mysteriously dropped. A student named Jennifer Chen had accused another student of poisoning her during a student government election. The accused was identified only as MT, female, age 21. My phone buzzed with a text from my boyfriend Daniel. Found something? Coming over. Daniel worked in cybersecurity for a tech startup, and Id asked him to look into Tyler from the design team. When he arrived 30 minutes later, his face was grim. Tyler Morrison doesn't exist, he said without preamble, setting his laptop on my table. At least, not the one working at your company. The real Tyler Morrison is a graphic designer living in Portland who's never worked in Seattle. Someone stole his identity, created fake employment records, and got hired at your company exactly 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I repeated, my mind racing. That's when Robert announced the department restructuring. It gets worse, Daniel continued, pulling up a social media profile. The fake Tyler is actually Tyler Brennan. And look at this. He showed me an Instagram photo from last summer. Madison in a bikini on a yacht, kissing a young man who was unmistakably our Tyler from the office. The caption read, "My love," with a heart emoji. Madison's boyfriend. I breathed. They planted him in the company. As a spy. Daniel agreed. And look at this timeline. 3 weeks ago, Jennifer Park from accounting quit suddenly, citing health reasons. 4 weeks ago, Marcus Webb from legal left for a better opportunity. 5 weeks ago, Sandra Coleman from operations took early retirement. All of them were in positions that would have had access to financial records. I grabbed my legal pad and started making connections. They're clearing out anyone who might notice financial irregularities. But what irregularities? Daniel pulled up another screen. I did some digging into public records. Madison owns a consulting company called MT Solutions, incorporated in Delaware 2 years ago. Guess who MT Solutions' biggest client is? My company, I said, feeling sick. Bingo. They've received $3.7 million in consulting fees over the past 18 months. For what? The company doesn't list any actual services provided. Embezzlement. I whispered. Robert's been funneling money to Madison through a fake company. And you were about to discover it, Daniel said. As senior marketing director, you'd have access to budget reports that would show these payments. That's why they couldn't let you have the promotion. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia from HR. I put it on speaker. America. I'm calling to inform you that I'll be retiring effective immediately. Patricia's voice sounded strained, like she was reading from a script. Your case will be handled by our new interim HR director, Jennifer Williams. She'll be in touch tomorrow. Patricia. Wait, I said urgently. Are you okay? Is someone making you do this? There was a long pause. Then Patricia said carefully, sometimes retirement is the best option when the circumstances become untenable. Take care of yourself, America. Document everything. She hung up before I could respond. Document everything. It was a warning. Jennifer Williams. Daniel was already searching. Let me guess, another of Madison's friends. It took him less than 5 minutes to find the connection. Jennifer Williams had been Madison's sorority sister at Washington State, her roommate at Pepperdine, and her business partner in 2 failed ventures. Photos showed them together at parties, on trips, at Madison's 21st birthday in Vegas. "They're taking over the entire company," I said, the full scope of the conspiracy becoming clear. "Robert's installing Madison's people in key positions so they can control the narrative and hide the embezzlement. We need to take this to the authorities," Daniel said. I was about to agree when my laptop dinged with a new email. It was from Jennifer Williams, the new HR director I'd never met. "Dear Miss Thompson," it read. "Following our investigation into this morning's incident, we've discovered several concerning patterns in your behavior. Multiple colleagues have come forward with complaints about your hostility toward new employees, particularly younger women. We've also found evidence of inappropriate use of company resources and potential theft of proprietary information. We are prepared to offer you a severance package of 2 weeks' pay if you sign the attached non-disclosure agreement and resign immediately. If you refuse, we will be forced to pursue criminal charges for assault and corporate espionage. You have 24 hours to respond." Attached was a 30-page legal document that would essentially bar me from ever speaking about anything that happened at the company, admitting to crimes I didn't commit, and waiving my right to sue. "They're trying to buy your silence," Daniel said, reading over my shoulder. "Or threaten me into it," I corrected. My phone buzzed with another notification. Someone had tagged me on Twitter. I opened the app to find a post from Madison with a selfie of her looking pale and weak in what appeared to be a hospital bed, shocked and heartbroken that a colleague I trusted would try to poison me on my first day. Some people can't handle seeing young women succeed. But I won't be intimidated. Justice will prevail. Number workplace violence. Number survivor. The post already had 500 likes and dozens of comments supporting her and condemning me, even though my name wasn't mentioned. Everyone in Seattle's tech community would know exactly who she was talking about. "America," Daniel said quietly. "We need to be very careful about our next move. These people are playing for keeps." I looked at all the evidence spread across my table. Madison's history of drugging competitors, Tyler's fake identity, the embezzled millions, the systematic removal of potential witnesses. And now they were coming for me, trying to destroy my reputation and threatening me with prison. "I'm not signing anything," I said firmly. "And I'm not running." They made one mistake. They didn't know I switched those cups. Madison poisoned herself with whatever she put in my coffee. That's our leverage. But the cups are gone, Daniel reminded me. There's no physical evidence. I smiled for the first time all day. The cups are gone, but Madison had to get that poison from somewhere. She's done this before, which means she has a pattern. And everyone makes mistakes when they think they've already won. I pulled out my phone and started composing an email to every former employee who'd left the company in the past 2 months. The subject line read, "Important. Please contact me regarding your departure from the company." "What are you doing?" Daniel asked. "Finding allies," I said. "If they forced out other people like they're trying to force me out, then I'm not alone in this. And together, we might be able to stop them." Within an hour, I had 3 responses. Jennifer Park, Marcus Webb, and Sandra Coleman all wanted to meet. Tomorrow, I would start building my case. Madison and Robert might have won this round, but the fight was far from over. The coffee shop in Fremont was nearly empty at 10 in the morning on Tuesday. I'd chosen it specifically because it was far from the financial district where someone might recognize me. Jennifer Park arrived first, looking over her shoulder nervously before sliding into the booth across from me. "They said you poisoned Madison Taylor," she said without preamble. "But I know that's not true. They use the same playbook every time." Before I could respond, Marcus Webb and Sandra Coleman arrived together. Marcus, a tall black man in his 40s, had been our legal department's rising star. Sandra, in her late 50s with silver hair, had run operations with military precision for 8 years. Now they both looked haggard, stressed, like people who'd been through war. "Thank you all for coming," I started. But Sandra cut me off. "Show us your phone," she said urgently. "Turn it completely off. They track everything." We all powered down our devices and placed them in the center of the table. Only then did Sandra relax slightly. 3 weeks ago, Jennifer began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found discrepancies in the quarterly reports. $3.7 million in consulting fees to a company that didn't seem to do anything. When I brought it to Robert's attention, he said it was for market research. But I kept digging. That's when the threats started." Marcus picked up the story. First, anonymous emails saying they knew about my husband's immigration status, even though he's been a citizen for 10 years. Then photos of our house, our kids' school. The message was clear. Back off or suffer. For me, it was drugs, Sandra said bitterly. They planted opioids in my desk drawer, then had security randomly search my office. Robert gave me a choice: retire quietly with a partial pension, or be arrested for possession with intent to distribute. "But why didn't any of you fight back?" I asked. They all looked at me with the same expression: exhaustion mixed with fear. "Because they're too well connected," Marcus said. "Jennifer Williams isn't just Madison's friend. Her father is James Williams, the federal judge. Tyler, or whatever his real name is, has connections to people who can make your digital life disappear. And Madison herself is absolutely ruthless. I need you to see something," Jennifer Park said, pulling out a folder shed hidden in her jacket. "I made copies before I left. Look at this." The documents showed a clear pattern of embezzlement going back 2 years. Money flowed from the company to MT Solutions, then to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The amount started small: 50,000 here, 75,000 there, but had escalated to hundreds of thousands per month. "Robert's been stealing from the company to fund Madison's lifestyle," Jennifer explained. "The yacht, the cars, the trips to Europe. It's all paid for with embezzled funds." My phone, despite being turned off, suddenly lit up and started buzzing. That shouldn't have been possible. I picked it up to see dozens of notifications flooding the screen. My social media accounts were posting horrible messages on their own. "I hate working with millennials. They should all be fired. Madison Taylor deserved what she got. Next time I'll use something stronger. Young women in tech are ruining everything." What the hell? I tried to log in to delete the posts, but my passwords had all been changed. My email was sending threatening messages to Madison, to Robert, to the entire company directory. Daniel had warned me they might do something like this, but seeing it happen in real time was terrifying. Within minutes, my professional reputation was being destroyed by posts I didn't make, emails I didn't send. Sandra's phone suddenly turned on by itself. Then Marcus. Then Jennifer's. All of them lighting up despite being powered off. "We need to leave. Now," Sandra said urgently. "They're tracking us." We scattered quickly, agreeing to communicate only through Daniel's secure channels. But as I drove home, I realized the full extent of what was happening. A restraining order was taped to my apartment door when I arrived. Madison had filed it that morning, claiming I'd been stalking her and sending death threats. The evidence was all the fake posts and emails being sent from my hacked accounts. Inside my apartment, Daniel was on his laptop, typing furiously. "They're good," he admitted. "But they made a mistake. The hack came from inside the company network, specifically from Tyler's workstation. I have the IP logs to prove it. That won't matter if no one believes us," I said, showing him the restraining order. "Look at this. I can't go within 500 feet of Madison, which means I can't go near the office building." My laptop chimed with a news alert. A local Seattle blog had picked up Madison's story. The headline read, "Tech employee attempts to poison CEO's niece over promotion dispute." The article was full of lies and half-truths, but the damage was spreading. My LinkedIn profile had been altered to include rants about nepotism and threats against entitled young women. Former colleagues were already distancing themselves, removing our connections, acting like they'd never known me. "America," Daniel said carefully. My company called an hour ago. They're terminating my contract. They said having me on their team while I'm dating someone under criminal investigation is a liability risk. Oh God, Daniel, I'm so sorry. I felt tears building behind my eyes. They weren't just coming after me. They were destroying anyone close to me. Don't apologize, he said firmly. This just means we're getting close to something they really don't want exposed. Look what I found. He showed me a medical record he'd somehow obtained. It was a prescription for ipecac syrup and magnesium citrate, both powerful emetics and laxatives, prescribed to one Mary Turner but paid for with a credit card linked to MT Solutions. Madison got the drugs using a fake name but paid with her company card, Daniel explained. She probably meant to use cash but grabbed the wrong card. It's the kind of mistake someone makes when they're overconfident. This is evidence of premeditation, I said excitedly. She planned to poison me. Except we obtained it illegally, Daniel reminded me. It won't be admissible in court. But it might be enough to interest a journalist. I thought of Sarah Mitchell, an investigative reporter who'd broken several corporate scandal stories in Seattle. She was tough, thorough, and most importantly, independent. Her publication wasn't owned by any of the tech giants that Robert had connections with. I'll reach out to her, I decided. But first, we need more proof. The security cameras at the office were supposedly down. But what about the parking garage? That's managed by a separate company. Daniel's fingers flew across his keyboard. You're right. Emerald City Parking Services. They maintain their own security system independent of the buildings they service. We drove to the parking garage that evening, careful to stay outside the restraining order's boundaries. The security office was in the basement, staffed by a bored-looking man named Carl who I'd said hello to every morning for 5 years. America, Carl said, surprised. Heard you were in some trouble. That true? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Carl. I need your help. Can you show me the footage from yesterday morning? Around 8:45? Carl hesitated, then looked around to make sure we were alone. Management said all footage from yesterday got corrupted. Some kind of system glitch. All of it? Daniel asked skeptically. That's what they said, Carl replied. But his expression suggested he didn't believe it either. But, funny thing about computer systems, sometimes they back up to places people forget about. He led us to a dusty storage room filled with old equipment. In the corner was an ancient desktop computer that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2005. This old beast still runs our legacy backup system, Carl explained. It keeps meaning to decommission it, but never gets around to it. And since it's not on the main network, he pulled up a program that looked prehistoric but functional. After a few minutes of searching, he found what we were looking for. The footage was grainy but clear enough. There was Madison's white BMW pulling into the garage at 8:30. She sat in her car for a full 10 minutes, and we could see her reaching for something in her passenger seat. She appeared to be mixing something, her hands moving in a very specific way. Then, clear as day, she poured liquid from a small medicine bottle into 2 coffee cups. After adding the regular coffee on top, she placed lids on both cups, then got out of her car and threw the medicine bottle into the parking garage dumpster. Carl, can you make us a copy of this? I asked, my heart racing. Already on it, he said, burning the footage to a DVD. Always liked you, America. You're the only executive who ever learned my name. Madison parks here every day now, and acts like I don't exist. We left with the DVD, but I knew we needed more. The bottle, I said to Daniel. We need that medicine bottle from the dumpster. We drove back to the garage, but when we located the dumpster, it was empty. Not just empty, but pristine, like it had just been delivered. Damn it, I muttered. They thought of everything. Not everything, Daniel said, pointing to a homeless man sitting nearby with a shopping cart full of recyclables. Excuse me, sir, were you here yesterday morning? The man, who introduced himself as Pete, nodded. Every morning, I check the dumpsters for bottles and cans. Did you happen to find any medicine bottles? I asked hopefully. Petta's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Why you asking? I pulled out $50. It's really important. Someone threw away evidence that could help prove my innocence. Pete considered this, then reached into his cart and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside were several medicine bottles collected for recycling. Among them was a small brown bottle with the label partially scraped off, but the prescription number was still visible. "This what you're looking for?" he asked. I could have hugged him. The bottle still had residue inside, and the prescription number would link back to the fake Mary Turner prescription. "Pete, you just saved my life," I said, handing him the 50 and another 20 on top. As we drove away with our evidence, my phone buzzed with an alert. Madison had done another interview, this time with a popular podcast. Her story was evolving, becoming more dramatic. Now she claimed I'd been harassing her for weeks before she even started, that I'd somehow found out about her hiring and had been planning my attack. "She's building a narrative," Daniel observed, "making herself more sympathetic and you more villainous with each telling. Then we need to build our own narrative," I said. "And we need to do it fast, before her version becomes the accepted truth." I called Sarah Mitchell that night. The investigative reporter listened to everything, asked pointed questions, and agreed to meet us tomorrow. "Bring everything," she said. "Documents, footage, the bottle, witness statements. If even half of what you're telling me is true, this is huge. But America, you need to know that once we go public with this, there's no going back. They'll come at you with everything they have." I looked at Daniel, who nodded his support. "They already are," I told Sarah. "At least this way. I'm fighting back." That night, as we organized all our evidence, I allowed myself a moment of hope. Madison and Robert thought they'd destroyed me, but they'd gotten sloppy. Overconfidence was making them careless. Tomorrow, with Sarah's help, we'd start exposing the truth. Sarah Mitchell's office was in a converted warehouse in Georgetown, far from the gleaming towers of downtown Seattle. The investigative journalist sat across from us, her sharp eyes scanning through every document, every piece of evidence we'd brought. She'd been at this for 3 hours, occasionally asking clarifying questions but mostly just absorbing information like a sponge. "This is big," she finally said, leaning back in her chair. "Embezzlement, fraud, assault with intent to harm. But we need more than just Madison's college history and some financial documents. We need a smoking gun. We have the security footage of her putting substances in the coffee," I pointed out. "Grainy footage from a 20-year-old backup system," Sarah countered. "Her lawyers will tear it apart. And the medicine bottle has no fingerprints since it was handled by Pete and his gloves." I felt my hope deflating. "So, we have nothing." "I didn't say that." Sarah smiled. "We have enough to start asking questions. And sometimes, asking the right questions makes guilty people do stupid things." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "James? Sarah Mitchell here. I'm working on a story about financial irregularities at Preston Tech. Specifically, $3.7 million in consulting fees to a company called MT Solutions. Want to comment?" She listened for a moment, then her smile widened. "No. I'm sure it's all legitimate. But my sources say otherwise. I'll be publishing tomorrow, unless someone can explain what services MT Solutions actually provided." After she hung up, she turned to us. That was James Morrison, the company's CFO. He just panicked and said, "Head, call me back. Want to bet he's calling Robert right now." Within an hour, Sarah's phone was ringing off the hook. The companies, lawyers, their PR firm, even a city councilman who owed Robert favors. Everyone wanted to know what she had and what it would take to kill the story. "This is good," Sarah said. "They're scared. But we need someone on the inside to crack. Someone who knows where all the bodies are buried but isn't so deep they can't get out." "Patricia," I said suddenly. "The HR director who just retired. She warned me to document everything. She knows something." We found Patricia at her home in Ballard, a modest craftsman house with a well-tended garden. She answered the door looking tired but not surprised to see us. "I wondered when you'd come," she said. inviting us in. Her living room was full of boxes, like she was planning to move. I can't say much, they made me sign an NDA. NDAs don't cover criminal activity, Sarah said gently, and they definitely don't cover protecting yourself from being an accessory to fraud. Patricia poured herself tea with shaking hands. 3 months ago, Robert asked me to create employment records for someone named Tyler Morrison. Said he was a friend's son who needed a fresh start. I should have questioned it, but Robert had never asked me to do anything unethical before. What changed? I asked. Madison arrived for her interview 2 months ago. It was a sham. Robert had already decided to give her the senior marketing position. But he needed someone removed first. You, America. You were too smart, too detail-oriented. You would have found the embezzlement. So they planned to frame me from the beginning. Patricia nodded miserably. The coffee maker you won as Employee of the Month? Robert had IT install spyware on it. They've been monitoring your home network for weeks, looking for something to use against you. When they couldn't find anything, they decided to create something. Sarah was recording everything with Patricia's permission. Tell us about the other employees who were forced out. Jennifer Park found the financial discrepancies first. They planted drugs in her car and threatened to call the police. Marcus Webb was going to report it to the board, so they fabricated a sexual harassment claim against him. Sandra Coleman tried to protect everyone, so they framed her with the opioids. Each time, I was forced to process their termination, to make it look legitimate. Why didn't you say something? Daniel asked. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Because they had leverage on me too. My daughter has special needs. Her medical care costs more than my salary, but the company's insurance covers it. Robert threatened to find a reason to fire me and contest my unemployment, leaving us without coverage. I couldn't risk my daughter's health. But you're talking now, Sarah observed. Because yesterday, after what they did to America, I couldn't live with myself anymore. And because I made copies of everything before I left. Patricia stood and walked to a painting on the wall, revealing a safe behind it. She pulled out a thick folder. Employment records, emails, financial documents, even recordings of conversations where Robert explicitly discussed the embezzlement. I've been collecting evidence for months, hoping someone would be brave enough to use it. The documents were damning. They showed not just the embezzlement, but a pattern of fraud going back years. Robert had been siphoning money long before Madison arrived. But her company, MT Solutions, had accelerated the theft. In just 18 months, they'd stolen nearly $5 million. This is it, Sarah said excitedly. This is the smoking gun we needed. But our celebration was short-lived. My phone buzzed with an alert from my bank. My accounts had been frozen. All of them. A notice said it was due to suspected fraudulent activity and pending criminal investigation. Then Daniel's phone rang. It was his landlord. Mr. Chen. I'm sorry, but I've received a notice that you're engaged in illegal activities in the apartment. I need you out by tomorrow. They know we're onto them, I said. They're accelerating their attack. Sarah's editor called next. Sarah, I just got a call from Preston Tech's lawyers. They're threatening to sue us for $50 million if we publish anything. The publisher is getting cold feet. We need another angle, Sarah said, thinking fast. Something that makes it impossible for them to suppress the story. That's when Patricia spoke up again. There's something else. Madison made a mistake yesterday. She threw the medicine bottle in the parking garage dumpster. Right. Yes. But it was cleaned out, I said. But she would have had to get those drugs from somewhere. And if she used the same fake prescription as before. Patricia pulled out her phone and made a call. Dr. Harrison? It's Patricia. I need to ask you something in confidence. She talked for a few minutes, then hung up with a satisfied expression. Dr. Harrison is a psychiatrist who works with the company's employee assistance program. Yesterday morning, someone called claiming to be from our HR department, asking him to prescribe ipecac and magnesium citrate for an employee named Mary Turner, who needed them for a medical procedure. He found it odd but filled the prescription. He has the phone records and the prescription information. That's prescription fraud, Sarah said. That's a federal crime. We now had enough evidence to take to law enforcement, but we needed someone who wouldn't be influenced by Robert's connections. Sarah made another call. This one to an FBI contact she'd worked with before on white-collar crime cases. Agent Delgado? I have something you're going to want to see. It involves embezzlement, wire fraud, and prescription drug fraud crossing state lines. Can we meet tonight? As we prepared to meet with the FBI, I noticed something on social media. Madison had posted another update, but this time, she'd made a mistake. In her hospital selfie, visible in the background, was a discharge paper with a timestamp. The timestamp was from 6 months ago, not yesterday. She'd used an old photo and tried to pass it off as current. She's getting sloppy, Daniel said, screen capping everything before she could delete it. Because she thinks she's won, I replied. She has no idea we have Patricia's evidence, or that the FBI is about to get involved. That evening, we met Agent Delgado at a federal building downtown. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, who listened to our story with increasing interest. When she saw Patricia's documents and heard the recording of Robert explicitly discussing the embezzlement, she immediately called in additional agents. This is exactly the kind of case we've been looking to build against Preston Tech, she revealed. We've suspected Robert Kensington of financial crimes for years but never had enough evidence. You've just given us what we needed, so you'll arrest them? I asked hopefully. Not yet, Agent Delgado said. We need them to think they've won. Criminals get careless when they think they're safe. Miss Thompson, I need you to do something that might be difficult. I need you to publicly apologize to Madison. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A fake apology, the agent clarified. Make them think you're beaten. Let Madison get overconfident. Meanwhile, we'll be setting up surveillance and building our case. Can you do that? I thought about everything Madison and Robert had put me through, everything they'd stolen, everyone they'd hurt. If it means taking them down? Yes, I can do that. Good, Agent Delgado smiled. Because tomorrow, you're going to give Madison exactly what she wants. And then we're going to take everything away from her. The apology I posted on social media the next morning was painful to write. But Agent Delgado had helped me craft it perfectly. It was contrite without admitting guilt, vague enough to avoid legal issues, but satisfying enough to make Madison feel victorious. After reflection, I realized that my actions on Monday were inappropriate and caused distress to Madison Taylor. I apologize for any harm caused and wish her the best in her new role at Preston Tech. I will be seeking help for my stress-related issues and hope to move forward positively. The response was immediate. Madison retweeted it with a sanctimonious comment about forgiveness and healing. Robert issued a company statement about their commitment to a safe workplace. The tech blogs that had vilified me suddenly praised Madison for her grace under pressure. What they didn't know was that I was wearing a wire when Madison called me an hour after the apology. I knew you'd cave, she gloated. You're weak, America. Always were. That's why you never deserved the senior position. You're right, I said, playing my part. I understand that now. Good. Because I want to meet with you. Today. There's a coffee shop on Pine Street. The one with the green awning. Be there at 2. It was technically a violation of the restraining order for us to meet, but Agent Delgado had anticipated this. She's getting overconfident. She wants to gloat in person. This is perfect. I arrived at the coffee shop wired for sound and video. Madison was already there, sitting in a corner booth with Tyler. They both looked triumphant, like cats who'd caught a particularly fat mouse. Sit, Madison commanded. And I did. You know, America, you actually did me a favor. Your little stunt with switching the cups made you look crazy and paranoid. No one will ever believe anything you say now. How did you know I switched them? I asked, genuinely curious. Madison laughed. I didn't poison your coffee, you idiot. I poisoned both cups. Mine had a smaller dose, just enough to make me sick but not seriously hurt me. Yours had enough ipecac and laxatives to make you soil yourself in front of the entire office during the client presentation. Can you imagine? The mighty America Thompson, crapping her pants in front of the Morrison Group executives. But why? I asked, though the wire was capturing everything. Because Uncle Robert needed you gone, and I needed a job that would legitimize my consulting fees, Madison said simply. MT Solutions has been very profitable, but the IRS was starting to ask questions. Now I'm a legitimate senior director, and my company is a legitimate vendor. It's perfect. Tyler leaned forward. And the best part is, there's nothing you can do about it. We have all your devices monitored, all your communications tracked. We know you met with those losers who got fired, and we know you talked to that journalist. But Sarah Mitchell won't publish anything. Her editor is too scared of our lawyers. You seem to have thought of everything, I said, trying to sound defeated. We have, Madison said proudly. Uncle Robert's been planning this for years. He just needed someone he could trust to help him. Someone family. Madison's eyes glinted with greed. 5 million so far. But that's just the beginning. Once IM's CEO, which should happen within 2 years, we'll have access to everything. Your uncle's just going to make you CEO. Of course not. Madison scoffed. He'll have a heart attack, a tragic one. Probably brought on by stress from all these employee complaints and lawsuits. He'll reluctantly step up to save the company. My blood ran cold. She was talking about murdering her own uncle. Even Tyler looked uncomfortable at this revelation. Madison, he said warningly. What? She can't do anything. Look at her, she's broken. Aren't you, America? Yes. I lied. I'm broken. Madison reached into her purse and pulled out a small vial of clear liquid. This is what was supposed to be in your coffee. Well, a diluted version. The real thing would have hospitalized you. Maybe even killed you if you had any underlying health conditions. She set it on the table between us like a trophy. I carry it everywhere now. You never know when you might need to eliminate a problem. That's evidence of intent to commit murder, Agent Delgado's voice said in my earpiece. We've got enough. Get out of there. But Madison wasn't done. You know what the funny thing is? The board of directors knows about the embezzlement. At least 3 of them do. They each get $50,000 a month to look the other way. This was huge. The corruption went all the way to board level. But I needed to leave before Madison got suspicious. I should go, I said, starting to stand. Yes, you should. Madison agreed. And America? If you ever try to cause trouble again, remember that I know where your parents live in Tacoma. Such a nice little house. Be a shame if something happened to it. The threat against my parents was the last straw. But I kept my composure as I left. Once outside, I walked directly to the FBI surveillance van parked a block away. We got everything, Agent Delgado said, grinning. Conspiracy to commit murder, admission of embezzlement, prescription fraud, and now threatening your family. Plus, she just gave us 3 board members to investigate. What about Robert? I asked. Madison basically admitted she's planning to kill him. Well, arrest them all tomorrow morning, the agent assured me. But tonight, we need one more thing. Robert's computer has all the financial records, but they're encrypted. We need him to access them while we're monitoring. How do we make that happen? Agent Delgado smiled. Sarah Mitchell is about to get her story back. Her editor might have been scared off, but WikiLeaks isn't afraid of lawyers. That evening, Sarah uploaded everything to WikiLeaks, everything except the FBI investigation, of course. The documents showing the embezzlement, the testimony from former employees, even screenshots of Madison's old social media posts about drugging students. It went viral within hours. My phone, which the FBI had cleaned and secured, rang constantly. Reporters, former colleagues, everyone wanting to know if it was true. But I stayed silent on Agent Delgado's orders, letting the documents speak for themselves. At Preston Tech, panic set in. Emergency board meetings were called. Robert was seen on security cameras accessing his computer at 2 in the morning, desperately trying to move money and delete files. But every keystroke was being monitored by the FBI. He was literally creating evidence against himself in real time. Madison went on social media trying to deny everything, but her story kept changing. First, the documents were fake. Then they were stolen. Then they were taken out of context. Each post made her look more guilty. Tyler tried to run. He made it to SeaTac Airport before federal agents stopped him at the gate. Head booked a one-way ticket to Costa Rica, which doesn't have an extradition treaty with the U.S. The attempt to flee was just another piece of evidence against them. But the most satisfying moment came when my parents called. "Honey, there are FBI agents here," my mom said, worried. "They say they're here for our protection because someone threatened us." "It's okay, Mom," I assured her. "They're the good guys. The people who threatened you are about to be arrested." As dawn broke over Seattle on Thursday morning, I stood in my apartment watching the news on my laptop. The FBI had given me a heads up, and I wanted to see it happen. "Breaking news," the anchor announced. "Federal agents are raiding Preston Tech headquarters in downtown Seattle. We're getting reports that CEO Robert Kensington and Senior Director Madison Taylor have been arrested on charges of embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy." The footage showed Robert being led out in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, his face haggard. Madison was right behind him, crying and screaming about her innocence. Tyler was already in custody, and the 3 board members were being arrested at their homes. Agent Delgado called me. "We've frozen all their assets. MT Solutions, the offshore accounts, everything. The stolen money will be returned to the company." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you get your life back," she said. "And testify when the time comes. With Robert gone, they need new leadership." "I don't want to go back," I said honestly. "Too many bad memories." "I understand. But you might want to hear their offer. Sometimes the best revenge is massive success." The federal courthouse in downtown Seattle was packed on the day of sentencing, 8 months after the arrests. I sat in the gallery between Daniel and my parents, watching as Judge Harrison prepared to deliver justice. The trial had been swift but thorough, with Madison and Robert both found guilty on all counts. Madison looked different now. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. She wore a simple gray suit, her hair pulled back in a plain ponytail. The months in custody awaiting trial had aged her. Shed tried to maintain her innocent act, but when Tyler testified against her in exchange for a lighter sentence, her defense crumbled. "Madison Taylor," Judge Harrison began, his voice stern, "you have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, prescription fraud, assault with a controlled substance, and making terroristic threats. Your actions show a pattern of deliberate cruelty and criminal behavior spanning years. You drugged innocent people to eliminate competition, showing a callous disregard for human safety and well-being." Madison's lawyer had tried to argue for leniency based on her age and her uncle's influence, but the judge wasn't buying it. "Your privileged background is not an excuse for criminal behavior. If anything, it makes your crimes worse. You had every advantage in life and chose to use them to hurt others. I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison." Madison sobbed as they led her away, but I felt no sympathy. Shed tried to destroy my life and threatened my parents. 8 years seemed lenient, if anything. Robert's sentencing was next. The 60-year-old former CEO stood as the judge addressed him. "Robert Kensington, your betrayal of fiduciary duty is staggering. You stole millions from the company you were entrusted to lead, corrupted board members, and orchestrated a campaign of harassment against your own employees. You turned a respected technology company into a criminal enterprise. I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison and order restitution of $5.3 million. The 3 board members, Henderson, Wu, and Stapleton, each received 5 years for their roles in the conspiracy. Tyler got 18 months, his sentence reduced because Head cooperated fully with authorities. After the sentencing, I stood outside the courthouse, giving a statement to the press. Sarah Mitchell was there, having won a journalism award for her exposé. The story had led to reforms in corporate governance across the tech industry. "Miss Thompson, what's next for you?" a reporter asked. "I'm focused on building my company," I replied. Thompson Consulting Group specializes in corporate integrity and protecting whistleblowers. We help companies identify internal threats and protect employees who report wrongdoing. It had been Daniel's idea to start the company, and it had grown faster than WED imagined. Jennifer Park was our CFO, ensuring financial transparency. Marcus Webb handled legal affairs, and Sandra Coleman managed operations. Patricia served as our senior advisor, her decades of HR experience invaluable. WED started with the settlement money from my wrongful termination suit, $2.5 million after Preston Tech's insurance company decided settling was cheaper than a trial. But our real breakthrough came when the new Preston Tech board approached us. With Robert gone and the company's reputation in tatters, they needed help rebuilding. They offered me the CEO position, but I declined. Instead, I proposed something better: a contract for TCG to oversee their restructuring and implement anti-corruption measures. It was worth $10 million over 3 years. "Aren't you worried about working with the company that tried to destroy you?" another reporter asked. "Preston Tech has new leadership committed to change," I explained. 90% of the employees are good people who were victims of Robert's corruption. They deserve a chance to rebuild. Besides, who better to prevent future corruption than someone who's experienced it firsthand? As the press conference ended, Daniel took my hand. We were getting married next month. A small ceremony with just family and close friends. Had been my rock through everything, sacrificing his own career to help me fight back. Now he was CTO of our company, using his cybersecurity expertise to protect our clients from digital threats like the ones WED faced. 6 months later, I received a letter from federal prison. It was from Madison, handwritten on plain paper. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. "America," it read. "I know you have no reason to forgive me, or even read this, but I need you to know that I understand now what I did to you and others. Prison has given me time to think about the person I became. I was raised to believe that winning was everything, that other people were just obstacles to overcome. My uncle taught me that power was the only thing that mattered. I see now how wrong that was. I'm getting therapy here, real therapy, for the first time in my life. The prison psychiatrist says I show signs of antisocial personality disorder, probably developed in childhood. It's not an excuse, just an explanation. I'm trying to change, to become someone who can contribute positively to society when I get out. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that your strength in standing up to me might have saved my life. If I'd continued down that path, I would have destroyed myself eventually. Thank you for stopping me. Madison." I read the letter 3 times, then filed it away. I didn't respond, there was nothing to say, but I was glad she was getting help. Maybe she could change. People sometimes did. A year after the trial, Preston Tech was thriving under new leadership. They'd implemented all our recommendations and become a model for corporate ethics in the tech industry. Our consulting firm had grown to 50 employees, with offices in Seattle, San Francisco, and New York. WED helped expose corruption at 12 major companies and protected hundreds of whistleblowers. The coffee maker that had been bugged was sitting in our office conference room as a reminder. WED had it professionally cleaned and debugged, and now it served as a conversation piece for clients. Next to it was a small plaque that read, "Trust but verify." One morning, a young woman came to our office. She was 25, fresh out of graduate school, and terrified. Her boss at a pharmaceutical company was pressuring her to falsify test results for a new drug. "I don't know what to do," she said, tears in her eyes. "If I refuse, I'll lose my job. If I comply, people could die." I saw myself in her, remembered standing in Robert's office being given impossible choices. But she had something I hadn't had then: support. "You do the right thing," I told her, "and we'll protect you while you do it." We took her case pro bono, exposed the pharmaceutical company's fraud, and helped her transition to a better job at an ethical company. She sent me a card months later that simply said, "Thank you for giving me courage." That's what our company had become, a beacon for people facing corporate corruption and workplace harassment. WED turned our pain into purpose, our trauma into triumph. Looking back on everything that happened, from that morning when Madison brought me the poisoned coffee, to building a successful company dedicated to justice, I learned several crucial lessons. First, always trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. That strange smell in the coffee saved me from humiliation and possibly serious injury. Second, corruption thrives in silence. The moment we started talking to other victims, sharing our stories, and building connections, Madison and Robert's power began to crumble. Third, document everything. Patricia's careful record-keeping and my own recording habits provided the evidence needed to expose the truth. Fourth, sometimes losing everything is the beginning of finding your true purpose. If Madison hadn't targeted me, I'd still be a marketing director at a corrupt company. Now I run a business that makes a real difference in people's lives. And finally, the most important lesson. When faced with corruption and abuse of power, you have a choice. You can submit and hope it goes away, or you can fight back. Fighting back is harder, scarier, and might cost you everything in the short term. But in the long term, it's the only way to create real change and protect others from becoming victims. The coffee that was meant to destroy me ended up being the catalyst for exposing a criminal conspiracy and transforming my life. Madison thought she was so clever, planning to humiliate me with a cup of poisoned coffee. She never imagined that her victim would have the presence of mind to switch cups, the persistence to gather evidence, and the courage to fight back even when everything seemed lost. What would you have done if someone handed you a suspicious cup of coffee at work? Would you have trusted your instincts and switched the cups like I did, or would you have politely drunk it to avoid making waves? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story valuable, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories of justice and triumph over workplace corruption. Share this with someone who needs to hear that standing up to bullies and criminals is worth it, even when it seems impossible. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your instincts exist for a reason. Trust them. And never let anyone make you doubt yourself when you know something is wrong.